Joining us now to discuss the ongoing negotiations with Iran is Hooshang Amirahmadi, who's the president of the American Iranian Council and also a former Iranian presidential candidate. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mike.
10 days away from the deadline,
yes.
We hear cautious optimism from Secretary of State John Kerry. From your perspective, are you as optimistic as Secretary of State John Kerry?
I think I'm optimistic cautiously, 50-50, what that really means.
Should it be better than 50-50 at this point?
It all depends on, see, the last minute there are always glitches. You know, I think there are two issues that are on the table that are serious. One, the extent of the sanction relief that Iran gets, and particularly on the UN side, and also the extent of the R&D, research and development, that Iran will have to or can keep. On both issues, there are tremendous gap yet. The gap is quite wide.
As it relates to the sanctions specifically, is that the greatest incentive for Iran to do this deal with the U.S.?
I would say particularly the sanctions on banking, because that's really the killer. If you can remove all the sanctions on Iran except for the banking, and it wouldn't make a difference. So what Iran is really looking forward to is get sanctions removed from the banking system, and that's where all of the sanction issues come.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it his motive or his desire to really torpedo these talks for the last several weeks. What effect, if any, has he had on these negotiations?
He obviously toughened the American position, as well as particularly the French position. Obviously, the French are now holding the gate, and, and to my surprise, the Americans were the one that imposed sanctions, and French are the one that don't want them to be removed. So that's quite ironic. But at the same time, I have to say, to all fairness to Netanyahu, he's really not calling for the end of the negotiations. He's basically trying to link these negotiations to other regional issues. And I personally, from the very beginning, thought that it is better to have the nuclear negotiation also expanded into other areas. In fact, in reality, in practice, that's what they have been doing. You know, Iran is now fighting ISIS next to the U.S., even if that's not, acknowledged. That the Americans just have recently taken Iran and the Hezbollah off the terrorist states, or things that are as of a global threat. So again, there are things that are happening, but I think if they would have been much better if it was more formal. I also think that they should have included countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel to some extent, and Turkey in this larger negotiation. I don't know why, Germany is there, but Saudi Arabia isn't there. And it's just very strange that you have to have a country like Germany that will be sitting on the table negotiating Iran's nuclear deal, which has nothing to do with it, and yet the countries in the region are basically isolated. So it's not good. I think they should really rethink about this whole strategy, even if the deal is made, still Iran has to live in the region with these countries. And I think it's very important that at some point they are brought in to the table. And I think also it's good to have the U.S. Congress, somehow included. It's just not going to work, because having a deal is one thing, and sustaining it and making it implemented is another thing.
As we heard just moments ago from the Ayatollah, he made it perfectly clear that this negotiation is only about nuclear talks, has nothing to do with any other policies in the region. What is the significance of him making those remarks in such a public forum?
Because he doesn't like Iran and the U.S. to establish relation ever. So his strategy is no peace, no war between U.S. and Iran. His strategy from day one was that I wanted to fight U.S. because I cannot, and I don't want to have peace with the U.S. because that's not good for me. So no war, no peace is his strategy. And if you were to have a comprehensive, grand strategy to settle issues, that will really lead to a normalization of U.S.-Iran relations. That's why he is keeping that gate closed.
10 more days before the deadline. He's the president of the American Iranian Council, Hooshang Amirahmadi. Thank you so much for coming in this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.